Notice the effect you get when you launch an iOS application and there's that split second after touching the icon where the app zooms in for you to use. Well, that effect is a lie. What you see when you're actually zooming in might look like your application, one of your application's view controllers, but in fact, all it is an image provided as an asset of your application, so that when iOS launches your app that first time, they can do an attractive zoom in on that image while your application is actually loading in the background. So to prove this, I'm going to jump into Xcode where I have my photo viewer application open from the earlier modules. And when I run this, and it might be a little bit difficult to see, we didn't see the zoom there. We just went from black to the application because I didn't have a launch image. Whereas the other applications on the home screen here do seem to have that zoom in effect. Now there's an important point here. What we see as a launch image is used the first time the application launches or after any device restart or app termination. If your application has already launched and then gone into background mode, iOS has taken a snapshot of the running application. It's taken a little screenshot picture, and it'll use that in preference to your provided launch image. As an example of that, what I'm going to do is go back to the home screen. I'll double-click the home button and swipe up settings. That will actually terminate the application. Then this time round, when I open it up, we'll see a blank launch image. The zoom will be blank. You'll see that. There's nothing in it, and then it fills in. Then go back to home, relaunch it again. Now we're just coming from the background. We see a screenshot taken of the previous time. That works the same way for your applications, but we still need one for that initial launch. These are required for submission to the App Store. We need to provide at least 2 launch images. It's 2 if you're making an iOS 7 iPhone app. There'll be 1 image for the 3.5-inch Retina display, that's 640 by 960 pixels, and another for the 4-inch Retina display, that's 640 by 1136 pixels. If you're making an iPad app, you need 4. You need both standard and Retina resolutions and for both portrait and landscape orientations. Now, if you're concerned about remembering what those resolutions are, you can either get them from the Human Interface Guidelines document, which will tell you exactly what they are, or there's an even easier and quicker way. After creating an application in Xcode 5, if you look at your images.xc assets folder, you will see a launch image section. This is a project that was created for the iPhone, so it's defaulted to needing iPhone portrait images at 2x and R4, meaning the 4-inch display. And clicking either of these, and they're currently blank, but if I bring up the Attributes Inspector, it'll tell me that it's expecting this one to be 640 by 1136 and this one to be 640 by 960. If you're building an app that has to go back to earlier versions like iOS 6 and before, including devices that might be standard resolution, you can check those and it'll tell you that you need even more at 1024 by 768 for a landscape iPad and so on. So it's a really good way to kind of get that hint of exactly what you need for the application that you're building. Now, some applications use this as an opportunity to show a splash screen, and that's actually discouraged by Apple. You're not supposed to do that. The official recommendation is it's supposed to look like your first screen without any data or text. Jumping back in even to the simulator, I'm just going to terminate a few of the applications, including my own there, which is what upset Xcode. So I'll come back in, terminate settings, terminate passbook, terminate maps and contacts. And you'll see that what Apple tend to provide is just a blank screen that you see zoom in, and then you'll see it being loaded with the actual data that you have. So contacts has nothing and then loads with some basic text. Same with photos, nothing and then some text. It still looks like the application, but it doesn't have any information in it. Game Center's kind of its own thing because it has the animation in there. Settings has nothing and then loads with the settings and the table view. The reason for this, having no text there at all, is so you can localize your app into multiple languages and you don't then end up with launch images that show a different language from the one that the user is running. So even in the Human Interface Guidelines documents, they show examples of the initial launch images for settings and weather. They're as blank as you could imagine. And again, remember, these are the initial launch images. After it's running and in the background, it's different from when you're just relaunching it into the foreground from the background, because that's a screenshot from the last time it was run. So here's one way that we could actually approach it. You'd run the application just in the simulator, And what I really want is this first screen without any data. I don't want to have to recreate this in Photoshop, but I can get an easy head start. An easy way to do it is to take a screenshot of this application first screen. I can go to the File menu in the simulator and say, Save Screenshot. I might, even when I'm running this, comment out a little bit of code to just give me an empty table view. But if you save Screenshot, what you'll find is that out on the desktop, you'll just get the iOS simulator screenshot, and that actually works fine even if you're viewing the simulator at 25 or 50 or 75%, it'll be the full resolution. So I'd take this into a graphics editor, I'd get rid of as much of the text, just kind of drawing some rectangles with the same color as the background, and save those. And in fact, not surprisingly, I've got a couple that I made earlier. So I'm going to stop the application, jump back into my project navigator, jump into my images.xc assets, find my launch image. I'll jump into my launch images folder. You can find this in the exercise files or make your own. I've got a launch and a launch R4. That's the 3.5-inch screen. I'll drag it to the 2X. And a launch R4 I'll drag to the R4. I don't see a lot obvious here because it is a very pale and white screen, but they are showing up correctly. I can just select them and then hit the spacebar to see them in quick look. So very simple stuff here, but that would add the needed launch images to this application. Now when I run it, I should actually see that initial zoom. There we go. Now we have launch images for the application.